Hello and welcome to Conversations with a Conch. Today I will be speaking with Stefen Deleveaux. Stefen, as you will hear, is a Bahamian economist and an authority on blockchain and fintech in the Caribbean. He currently serves as the president, CEO of the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance, where he advocates for blockchain technology and its adoption through the region. Stefen is also a co-founder of the Shift the Culture startup advocacy group and the ArrowLink Ventures Business Incubator, both based in the Bahamas. I wanted to have this conversation with Stefen because, as you may remember from the first episode, we are rapidly approaching mid-September, and this is when the National Insurance Board of the Bahamas is projected to run out of monies for the Bahamian people. So Stefen is as capable and competent as any to describe the harsh dangers and realities of the situation we face. And I believe he is the right person to speak to in coming up with bold, imaginative solutions to help us escape this reality and possibly prosper as a nation and as a people in future. So I hope you enjoy the conversation, and without further delay, I give you Stefen Deleveaux. Hey, Stefen,
Hey,
how's it
okay, we're
going?
back. Pretty good, pretty bad. Wow, pretty good.
Oh, that's cool. I'll edit this because we sound like a bunch of dorks.
Totally.
Or maybe I'll leave it in for authenticity. We'll see how we feel at the end of it.
We'll see how it
Um,
goes.
yeah, yeah. So thanks for coming on the podcast. You're kind of the perfect person to have on right now. Um, I've introduced you in the intro,
Hmm.
you are one of the nation's leading economists and experts on fintech, which is some sort of portmanteau of financial technology, I'm assuming.
Yes,
Yes. Okay, and you are also the president of the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance.
mhm, that is correct.
Okay. So the reason for perhaps for our international listeners or maybe any listeners who haven't listened to the previous episode, the reason I wanted to have you on is because we are in month 7 of coronavirus lockdown conditions, and we are peeking over the edge of an economic precipice. We are in the Bahamas, a small island nation, 700 islands, about 400,000 people, and our primary industry is tourism. And in episode 1, I spoke with Travis Robinson, a member of Parliament, and he and well, this is common knowledge at this point, but we are basically geared to run out of money in 2 weeks. And by run out of money, I mean the National Insurance Board of the Bahamas is about to deplete its reserves, which means that it will not be able to continue extending payments to unemployed Bahamian citizens. So basically, according to Travis, we've run through about 10 years of savings in 7 months because we've never had such levels of unemployment. And the economic reality on the ground is that 80% of Bahamian citizens have less than $500 to their name. So now, so it's not a pretty picture, and I just wanted to frame it, and I was hoping we could start by you introducing yourself and maybe saying a little bit about what it is that you do.
Sure. So as you said, my background's in economics, and I run the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance, which is basically an advocacy group for the adoption and the use of blockchain technology, not only in the Bahamas, but also in the wider Caribbean. Um, so how we operate is we kind of split into two parts where you have education first, which is mainly in terms of, I mean, the long-term goal is to get, blockchain technology education into schools throughout the region, but also, a separate focus on maybe software developers because they're the ones who kind of build the technology at the end of the day. So we want to make sure that at the end of the day, not you don't only have people who understand the technology, which is very important, but you also have people who can build and create these things and actually, create new industries with them. So you have the education side, which we're, actually in the middle of ramping up. And then on the other side, you have what's basically a lobbying effort where we engage with governments, regulators, other stakeholders to basically push for better adoption of the technology, better embrace of maybe either local or international blockchain companies to operate and to have better laws and regulations surrounding the industry in the Caribbean. So it's basically
Okay.
yeah, and it's basically a way where it kind of interacts with each other where um so obviously this is at the end of the day, this is new technology. This is new groundbreaking technology, and we need people to understand what it is. So the advocacy side will pretty much work with the education side because they have to go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. So, question: why would the Bahamian government or the Bahamian people even care about this technology when everything we do works fine as it is?
Does it though? No, but
I, I beg to joke in there.
but no, it's a good question though. It's the fact is blockchain kind of opens up a lot of opportunities, a lot of potential for us to do things in a completely different way than we've done before. So obviously, I'm sure a lot of people already know or have some familiarity with blockchain. It's a kind of decentralized distributed ledger. It's a totally new way of doing, things from accounting systems to just regular payments to distribution and interactions and transactions. And that can be kind of extrapolated. It can be extrapolated into both public sector and private sector, both for general operations, maybe government product, not products, but government technology, and just kind of a general upgrade, really, of the technology we use and the systems we use, where you could kind of, and you would know, but other people may not know, our governments right now, our government agencies, their systems are completely siloed. None of them interact with each
Mm-hmm.
other. Um, Everything's kind of separated. It's incredibly chaotic and haphazard. And just as an example, you could use blockchains to kind of very easily systematize and put all of those into one real system. And that would greatly increase, things like ease of doing business, just general operations. It's streamlining it really.
So it would remove the friction between in the communication process between the various ministry or organs of government, and perhaps create a seamless user experience so citizens better interact with their government.
Yeah, massively. And it would do it in a much more automatized way, a much more automated way.
Mm, mm. Okay, and you said something about it being decentralized. This seems to imply that this will take power away from the government. Is that the case? And if it is, what would be the incentives to the government doing
Mm. It's a good question, actually. And so decentralization is something that's very important. And I think blockchain has kind of pushed the idea and the theory surrounding decentralization into the forefront. But at the same time,
that?
decentralization isn't a binary. It's not, is it centralized or is it decentralized? It kind of goes in
Mm-hmm.
varying degrees. So you can have, and there are different kinds of blockchains. Like there are the big open public, as they call them, fully or almost fully decentralized blockchains, but you have some that are much less decentralized, where they're much more what they call like private or permissioned, and they're
Mm-hmm.
maybe used for certain small things, maybe just a company that wants to use it internally. And they don't necessarily have to. They still keep some level of control, really. So if you have, say, a company or a government, they can still benefit from a bit more of the increased decentralization, but they also get so much more on the other hand, in terms of like the transparency, the security, the automation, just the seamlessness of how it works. So
Okay.
there's not that. So obviously it depends on how you structure it, but you can do it in a way where they don't, because obviously governments want to keep power at the end of the day, but you can do it where they still have a lot of control over what happens in, their own maybe private blockchain.
Okay. Well, I mean that fits with the stated purpose of this government. This government campaign on being one of the most transparent administrations in history. I believe they campaigned on bringing in the Freedom of Information Act. So,
Mm.
I mean, that's one of the reasons that I'm a big fan of this administration. Uh, Frankly, and it's funny. Going on social media, you see a lot of people complaining about this government, but I feel like everyone has the memory of a goldfish because they're forgetting literally that the last administration basically what bankrupted us and sent us back down to credit rating.
It's true. And I don't want to get into particular politics too much, but I definitely think the goal really is to kind of put these systems in place where it doesn't even matter who the administration is. You will always have
Hmm.
some level of transparency. So I'll give you a kind of interesting example. So in China, where things are obviously much more centralized,
Hmm.
government has a lot more control. There have been instances of people using blockchains to just kind of ascribe messages into them. And it's kind of hard to explain, but you can basically send transactions via blockchains that have, just maybe some kind of text or some kind of message in them. Um, but
Hmm.
that way, because blockchains are mostly immutable, as in they can't be changed or edited, and they are long lasting, basically into ad infinitum. You there have been
Hmm.
some basically people have taken things where maybe they're rebelling in some kind of way, or um it's kind of an anti-censorship. It's kind of a censorship proof system as well, so you can kind of put things out there
Hmm.
where, so if it's a freedom of information kind of activity, you can put it into
Hmm.
the actual blockchains, and then nobody would be able to turn around and say, oh, we don't want that out there. There's literally nothing you can do about it. So it's kind of
Hmm.
I actually, I think probably the most important aspect of blockchains overall, in an international kind of global way, is the censorship resistant aspect of it.
That's really important in an age where governments are, at least on the world stage, appear to be increasingly tyrannical. What you just said reminds me of the saying, "The internet is written in ink, not pencil." So
Uh,
this is a good example of that. So we're yes, we've framed out the situation we're in. The reason I wanted to speak to you because I have a personal belief that these cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies and just technology in general could solve our issues. As I was wondering, as an economist, could you perhaps maybe dig into a little into the Bahamian economy and really maybe I mean maybe just a little backstory on what is the situation that we're in because the Bahamian economy it's not an economy like most other economies. It's unique in many ways. Could you dig in a little into that?
yeah, no, definitely. We might get a bit controversial, but the Bahamian economy is kind of in a situation where, and it pretty much always has been really, where we don't have much of an economy to begin with. So we've created this full focus on tourism, really, which, to be fair, has been fairly good for us over the years in at least nominal dollar value sense. But
Mm-hmm.
it's also been entirely problematic in other ways. Biggest example, the fact that we're so reliant on it that whenever it declines for whatever reason, um, basically the whole economy kind of dies as a result of it. So, and thankfully, we've also always had this kind of finance. So we're also a financial services somewhat of a hub. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, that's also been pretty much on the decline in the last, mainly in the last few years, but even in the last couple decades, I'd say. So it's kind of an
Mm.
issue where if anything affects tourism, we all fall because of it. And then our main backup really is also kind of on the decline. So we're in this very weird situation where we pretty much have nothing in this circumstance because people aren't coming in. We're not getting tourists to a large degree, and so we have nothing. A lot of people are unemployed, and at the same time, there are no there's no foreign reserves, no foreign currency coming in general to prop up, our dollar. So it's a
Mm.
whole
Mm.
bundle of issues tied into one, and it's not a secret. We've known for a long time that we should push to basically to diversify our economy, but we've never done so because it's difficult and we're not good at doing difficult things.
Yeah, I was gonna say this not keeping all your eggs in the basket. That seems like one of the things that most parents will teach their children when they're very young. Don't rest all your hopes on one, sort of one avenue.
Right.
It seems economically foolish, but I guess nature always takes the entropically cheapest path. And maybe we do this because it's easy. And
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, so you said something interesting there. You said something about our currency being pegged to the American dollar.
Yes. So we have a one-to-one peg. Um, I guess I'll go into that. So we
Yeah,
basically,
how does this work?
it's a good question. So we have a Bahamian dollar that is equal to the US dollar when we're inside the country, but it's basically worthless when you're outside the country. So what that means is we have our own national dollar. We, I mean, and it's not we didn't make it equal. Sorry, it didn't become equal to the dollar just by circumstance. We made it so we created the peg,
Mm.
basically so that
Intelligent design.
exactly. But so how it works is that we have this peg, and whenever people come down again, because our main industry is tourism, one, it's easy for them to just kind of use what they have, maybe trade into our dollar if necessary. There's not particularly any reason because we accept US dollars, but sometimes people still want to. So it's very easy to just kind of interact and buy and sell and whatnot. Um,
Mm.
and that kind of creates just an easy network and easy trade situation. And it also means that for us, we can also give our money back, obviously locally, but the banks
Mm.
also, they respect it. So when we need to travel, we need to go elsewhere, we get US dollars or what have you at
Mm.
typically good rates because of this peg. And it's been good to us. But it also means that it creates this weird situation where we always have to have a specific amount or at least a favorable amount of US dollars or other foreign currency in our reserves at all times just to back the peg, really.
Mm, mm. What just so the Minister of Finance, I remember 6 months ago, came out with a statement saying there was no fear of running out of foreign currency reserves. What happens when we run out of US dollars?
Yeah. So we've never, at least as far as I know, we've never had a real long-term situation of running out. But because this is such a weird circumstance where almost nobody's coming in, almost no foreign currency is coming in. So those reserves are stagnant. There's nothing being added to them. So
Mm.
as and we still have to use those reserves for so many things. They're used for international trade. We still use it for, if we need to buy oil, for example. Um, we use it for debt and interest payments. So
Mm.
regardless of what's happening, those funds will continue to be depleted, especially as our government has to, fund so many things right now. And
Mhm.
if hopefully it doesn't, but if those funds run out, then we have nothing to back our peg, which means that we basically will end up having to force devaluation of our dollar, which would not be a great thing.
Yeah, so we're currently, well, I'm not even sure about currently, but we're one of the richest countries in the Caribbean, at least per capita.
Hmm.
So if we run out of foreign currency reserve dollar, our standing as the number one economy in the Caribbean might deteriorate.
Oh, I mean, everything will deteriorate, honestly. Because, and that's mainly because we import just about everything. I think even food wise, or just goods in general, it's about 95% of the things that we consume are imported. So if we have to devalue our dollar for any reason, then just imagine how that kind of affects our imports. We automatically have less value in, our bank accounts, in our government accounts, and for us to continue going in the same way where we're importing anything, it's like you automatically lose a chunk of your money, and you still have to pay the same amounts.
Mm,
Still have
mm,
to
mm.
buy, sorry, you still have
So
to buy the same amounts of things to survive, really.
yes, yes, it's not like our demands have diminished, just our ability to generate revenue has diminished.
Exactly.
Mm. What hopes are there? Okay, so it's been 6 months, and we don't seem to have, at least to my knowledge, we don't seem to have diversified our economy yet. Um, what what hopes are there that we can diversify our economy in time? Say, I've heard some voices, and I see voices in social media saying that we should be exporting more conch, or we should be fishing more, or we should convert large swathes of land to agriculture.
Hmm.
Um, what hopes are there that we can sufficiently diversify our economy and generate the revenue we need to prevent a collapse?
Boy, that is, I mean, so right now I would say, um, it's tough because that depends on so many things. Like whether or not we collapse depends on, a balance of payments, the same foreign reserve issue, but also just generally the fact that we're so focused on tourism. If people aren't coming in, then nobody has work. And at the very least, if no one's working, then what the government has been doing is trying to, give out payments, give out food, things like that. But again, at the end of the day, if the treasury runs out or the foreign reserves run out, then you can't do anything anymore. So when it comes to diversification, in the short term, it's very, very difficult to do anything really. In the long term, there's a lot of things we could do, but right now it's a bit tough,
Right, right, right. So the time to diversify was 10 years ago, not
basically.
not when we're bankrupt and 80% of Bahamians are in poverty.
Yeah, that pretty much covers it. And I mean, I don't know oof, how easy it would be to, convert half of what we do into agriculture, but it is, and I fully believe, like I think uh just reducing our imports would go such a long way. I think pushing for more
Mm,
agriculture, pushing for more like farmer co-ops, just more food production, even community gardens, community um, food. gardens. In general, that would go such a long way um, into long-term diversification and into long-term like food security and whatnot. But
Mm,
and we can push for it now. I think we absolutely should be pushing for it now, but that's not an overnight solution.
Yeah, we can't grow enough cassava and mangoes to pay off our national debt in the next month. That's not going to happen.
Right. Which I think is exactly why our government has, pushed to open borders at this point. It's probably
Mm.
it's probably a necessity, really. I don't know. It's survive or die at this point, and we'll see what happens.
Mm. Should be the motto of the Bahamian government. We'll see what happens.
Basically. So it's not a pretty situation, and there's nothing that can easily solve it either. It's kind of we'll do what we
Mm.
can, and hopefully at least we'll take the right steps. Um, and like I said, I think agriculture will go such a huge way if we actually start focusing on it a bit more strongly. The other thing is probably well reducing our fossil fuel reliance, not only for the obvious reasons of like climate change affecting us, but also because that affects our money, our foreign reserves to such a large degree because of how we get fossil fuels. We have to buy it, and we have to buy it with foreign currency.
Yeah, I believe it's is it $4 billion a year, a third of our GDP that goes towards fossil fuels purchase?
Yeah, that sounds absolutely right.
Yeah. I've been curious about that statistic for a while because if you think about that over a 10-year period, that's $40 billion, which I don't know the numbers offhand, but I think
Mhm.
that would go a long way to creating a renewable energy grid.
Massively. And I mean, and here's again where we get into decentralization because we have outside of Freeport, we have one main electricity company, and there's no competition, and their decisions affect everybody. And unfortunately, this government, for multiple reasons that I won't get into, has pushed so strongly against the adoption of renewable energy over the last few decades that now we're in the
Mm,
situation where we're in so many problems. We have no real diversity of any kind of power and energy, and we're fully reliant on this one company. And when it goes, we all suffer for it. And at the same time, because they haven't embraced renewables of any kind, we are fully reliant on still dirty fossil fuels. And there's no sense of, other than some of the wealthier folks, no real uh sorry, solar panels, wind, anything like that. So it's something that we should have done a long time ago that we haven't, and hopefully we realize this and move forward into that.
yeah, I will have to give the government credit where it's due. This administration seems to be putting a little bit more effort into renewable generation schemes on the Family Island.
Yes, absolutely.
I've seen them.
And I definitely will say that they're pushing forward, and I'm thankful for it. But we need to make sure that's a sustained activity and not just a one-time thing. We have to continue making sure that happens.
Mm. So we have let's see. We have this strange currency. We have some sort of imaginary Bahamian currency, which the way you described it, it's almost like where you enter a festival and you trade in your dollars when you come in, and they give you sort of Disney dollars, and then you can spend them. And if you want to leave, they're useless, so you better trade them before you leave. And then we also, per your description, we seem to have some sort of imaginary economy as well, which is leading us down the road to all these problems that we're experiencing through the diversity. We simply haven't hedged our bets enough. Um, Let me ask you a question. Uh, cryptocurrency, which is basically, I mean, as I think a lot of people think it's magic internet money. How is more imaginary stuff going to get us out of the problems that were created by imaginary uh, financial objects?
I mean, it is magic internet money, which is not necessarily a bad thing because what we have now is magic physical money. So, but basically, it's interesting because actually two things. Actually, the way I actually got into the space is that I was already really interested in fintech, but I read up about this blockchain thing. I had heard about Bitcoin a few years earlier, but I never really thought it was something I really need to pay attention to. But it wasn't until about 2015 I started looking into blockchain as like an extension of fintech, and
Mm.
actually read a paper from two two former central bankers in Barbados, um, Jeremy Steven and Winston Moore, and they actually wrote saying that this Bitcoin thing could potentially be really good for not just the national economy but the global economy, and that central banks and governments should hold it as a hedged asset. And
Mm.
and this is back in 2015. I don't remember what the price was, but I mean, if any any central bank had actually listened to that, they would all
Mm.
be in a much better financial situation than they are now. Um,
Mm.
but going back to the idea of what this is and what this money is, I mean, it's the fact that all money is fake, all money is imaginary, and all you do is take the prescribed value of it, and all money really relies on is scarcity and consensus at the end of the day. So you have gold, for example, which is obviously physically scarce. You have dollars, which are not particularly scarce because governments can print them, but only governments can print them. So you still have this kind of legal scarcity at the end of the day. And Bitcoin,
Quite quick question on that.
mhm,
So as we see when we look at America, America has printed what? The Federal Reserve has printed something like $8 trillion this year
yeah,
to hedge against. Why can't? So I'm assuming the Bahamian government can't do
no, and that's particularly because we use a peg system. If we didn't, we could. Um,
that. Hmm.
but the what we've decided to do with our dollar is we just attach it to the US one. So we really don't. It's kind of like how how Europe works, how the Eurozone works, where the smaller countries don't really have any say on what happens with the dollar.
Hmm.
Um, and that's actually what mainly how Greece got in such a bad situation that they were in, where they should have probably devalued their own currency. Things were so bad that that may have actually been better long term. They couldn't because
Mm.
they were using a euro. Um, we kind of are in the same position where we can't really engage in monetary policy because we are completely tied to the US dollar, which means that how our money works is basically what our money's value is tied to them,
Hmm.
and we kind of just do what they do. Or
No,
we, yeah,
question. This is if the USA prints $8 trillion, do we get to expand our economy in proportion to that? Because it seems like they're sort of rigging the system. They're injecting a large amount of currency into a closed system,
right.
which I mean that in effect that kind of dilutes our dollar.
And in fact, yeah, it does because our dollar is just tied to them at the end of the day. But then at the same time, you also have to think of how this kind of like how quantitative easing works, how inflation works. And I think one of the biggest things that we're seeing and that we've been seeing since the last crisis,
Mm.
when they really pushed on quantitative easing, is that if the money is all basically going to the financial sector, it's just going into banks, but this money isn't flowing into the actual real economy, then
Hmm.
at the end of the day, the real effect is minimal. There's almost no full effect, which is actually why, as much as they've been printing, you haven't seen much inflation in the U.S. economy,
Mm.
at least for the main kind of industries, just because you've seen massive asset inflation, and that's because the money's gone almost completely into the financial sector and the financial system, but into the real economy, there's not been that much um, difference, and
So
people aren't actually getting any wealthier. They're actually getting poorer because all that money is going
yeah,
into one particular place.
yeah, I was gonna say only 1.5 trillion of that money actually went to U.S. citizens, and the remainder went into, I guess, asset inflation, as you say. So my guess is, I mean, I'm no economist. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my guess is that the reason we haven't seen any inflation is because all the inflation that we're seeing is an inflated gap in income disparity between the richest and the poorest citizens.
Yep. And as we're seeing, that gap is widening massively, especially during this pandemic, because, well, I mean, they're still getting money, and most of these, like especially the large tech firms, they're thriving right now. While
Mm,
at least maybe, I don't know, 30 to 40% of people are unemployed and not creating any kind of economic activity.
mm. So we're talking about crypto. We're talking about these big government pulling these big economic levers. And part of me wants to say it's a blessing in disguise that the Bahamian government can't print its own money. That I mean, because right now it seems like they have full use. At least not this administration, but the last administration seemed to be pretty prolific with their use of the paper shredder. And I can only imagine how much damage could be caused if they had full use of a printer as well. That's
It's an interesting question, and I unfortunately haven't thought about that enough because I guess even me, I'm so used to us not being able to really utilize monetary policy. It is a very good question of what, kind of a quantitative easing here could or would result in. But
you know, the Christian Council would be like, "What is that? Some sort of Harry Potter spell?"
nice. But no, I
um,
mean, yeah, I just don't know.
yeah, no, I mean that's a hypothetical we could dig into sometime.
I'll
Um,
definitely think about that some
so
more.
so my conversation with Travis Robinson, he estimated when we were talking about the amount of Bahamians living below the poverty line with less than
Hmm.
$500 to their name. He estimated that the income disparity gap would treble during this crisis, and mostly because the key industries that seem to have been affected worldwide are restaurants, movie theaters, maybe sports arenas,
Hmm.
anywhere where lots of people need to congregate for the business to make money. And
Right.
for me, these sorts of businesses are basically a microcosm, or rather, the Bahamas is a macrocosm of a hotel or a restaurant. And what Travis was explaining to me is that the poorest communities in the Bahamas, the least economically developed, these are actually the labor engines of the Bahamas. So the
Mm.
majority of these communities are the laborers that are making cocktails, folding sheets, doing laundry services. They're providing all the labor to sustain this. So I guess my question is we're talking on this a very high level of what governments can do, and what I was wondering is how do any of these policies benefit the average Bahamian citizen, the
Mm.
4 out of 5 Bahamian citizens that are facing economic despair? Because if the government say it borrows money how does that even get back to the citizens that need it most?
I actually think you put it really well just now, where basically our entire economy is almost fully analog. There's no real use or utilization of anything digital or any real use of technology. And I mean, a lot of the local companies, a lot of the local, restaurants, small businesses, they don't even have a website. So it's almost a fully analog kind of system. And in times like these, as you said, where you don't have the normal type of interactions or people congregating in one place, all of those things basically die because there's no real way to get around that. So it's a very tough situation. And as you said, the gap is increasing here, just like in the US, because um, from middle class and up, most people are still working because they're either working some kind of finance job or whatever, where they can still continue doing what they're doing, but from home. A lot of people working from home. But in the case of like the smaller businesses, a lot of people can't do that because it's not based on that kind of work. So just in general, that gap is increasing. And of course, there are things like, you have wealthier people have more access to global networks, global markets there. And I mean, the US stock markets right now, again, there's this crazy asset inflation that's been happening over the last decade. And the more access they have to that, the more that gap increases. Because generally, lower class people they barely have access to local markets, let alone foreign markets.
Yeah,
So it's
the internet is not universalized down here, so it's not like we equip all of our citizens with internet or the education to use these services. Not everyone has the same capabilities. Otherwise, I guess they would be more capable of transitioning to making money online.
absolutely. So I mean, I think a long-term goal for us, I mean, outside of the regular diversification necessity, I think just increasing access and use of technology in general. Like even like if you think about the guys who sell coconuts on the side of the road, if they had like a digital wallet,
Mm-hmm.
that would already increase um how they operate in a large degree. And that's low hanging fruit.
Yeah, and not only that, but I mean, this has bothered me for a while. We're stuck in a pandemic where just coming into contact with other humans increases the risk of viral spread. Yet
Mhm.
everyone is touching money and handing it to everyone.
Oh yeah.
It seems outrageous that that what the first thing we didn't do was switch to digital sort of scanning currency and send
Right.
it to each other's phones.
And to be fair, I know, our central bank has been working on the sand dollar project. I believe they're pushing to have it done by end of the year. So at the very least, that would go a long way to, removal of necessity of cash. Um,
What is the sand dollar for international listeners who might not know?
ah, so it's basically a what they call a central bank digital currency, where you have usually a blockchain based, but obviously like a private blockchain that they still have
Mm.
general control over. Um, it's basically a digital representation of our dollar. So, and there are actually a lot of central banks kind of pushing these pilot projects right now. They really want to get into it because it just makes everything so much easier. And obviously, cash is problematic not just in terms of cleanliness, but there's a high cost to using cash. So making everything digital, where it's literally just ones and zeros, that makes it so much easier. And it's blockchain technology that's really pushing, like breaking these barriers. And a lot of the let's say the US and the UK and whatnot, a lot of these larger companies, it's never really been a problem for them because they've always had, you know, um, payment providers, easy kind of fintech. Even this, like the banks are very, very technologically savvy, and even the ones that aren't, they're being fought by these like challenger banks, a lot of these smaller fintech companies. But in
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
smaller countries like ours that are less advanced, we haven't really had that. So for us, it'll be a proper leapfrog. leapfrog where we're going from either just cash or even just cards to a fully digital direct kind of access point.
Nice. So a sort of economic sublimation.
Exactly.
If you remember your physics, solid to a gas.
Yeah, no, that's actually a
Yeah,
great way to put it.
yeah, I like that. I'm coining terms left and right here. So
You should do this for a
yeah,
living.
yeah. I wish. Jesus, maybe I could get paid with some of that fake internet money.
There you go.
Um, okay, the sand dollar is a copy of a copy of a copy. Let's
Simulacrum.
okay. Yeah, it's a similar. Oh God, I love that word. Um, so we're in a situation. Everyone's so our 80% of our people are out of work, less than $500. We're set to open up. We hope it's going to be in time to not suffer too much suffering and hardships. Um, I we you sent me. We both just watched the address the other day on the signing of the property in Eleuthera. I believe it's Jack's Bay.
Yes.
Um, the sticking, we haven't discussed this. I'm glad because I wanted to get your reaction. Yes, my heart sort of jumped a beat when I heard them describe it as a second Atlantis. Um, what are what's how what is this? What do you think about it, and how does it solve our economic troubles, or at least solve?
Yeah. I'll try to watch my words a bit, but basically, again, we've operated this whole time as a tourism country, a tourism entity, where our main kind of established method of economic interaction in general has been these large, massive resorts. And what this is, this development in Eleuthera is basically another extension of that. And
Mm.
granted, I will be a bit fair that this isn't new. This is something that, the owners or whatever have been working on for, I think, around a decade. But
Mhm.
it's just insane that it's happening right now because it kind of shows fully, it bears fully that we are still firmly entrenched in this kind of mentality where we just want
You,
to
you
fill
can
our
say the
islands
word.
with a bunch of resorts that hopefully we think are just going to bring all these tourists and that's it. Like
So,
we have no other way of developing or no other method of developing our islands properly.
well, it's not an inability less than it is an unwillingness. Or, I
Yes.
mean, I have quite a bit of sympathy with the project because, for me, it's a necessary evil. There are times to debate economic diversity. There are
Mhm.
times to, do the SWOT analysis of the economy and what we can do to improve our standing globally. But now is not one of those times with NIB set to run out of money in 2 weeks. So for me, at least, it seems like a necessary evil. Um, I
And
had
I see where you're
go
coming
on.
from, and I see where you're coming from, and I would agree with that. There's also the potential problem of, if we still have to kind of wait and see how tourism in general is kind of affected after all this, and not only tourism, but also like typical things like people flying. So
Mm.
it is still a gamble at the end of the day, even though it's one that's we've seen been okay. But yeah, this
Mhm.
this kind of changes everything. So we'll see.
So I had and just because it seemed like you were about to say the word, but I'm going to go ahead and just say, well, I'm going to quote Aaron Green. I had Aaron on the podcast last week to speak about human rights,
Oh, nice.
and we didn't get into it, but she mentioned the word. She said we're running a plantation economy. Is what does do you agree with her sentiments at all? Is there anything you can say on that?
Woof. But yeah, no, it's 100% true. And I'd be completely disingenuous if I said otherwise. Because as I said, we've created this economy that's based on, I'm going to go ahead and say neocolonialism, and where it's a service-based economy that's completely service-based, to where
Mm-hmm.
the visitors, because I mean, you have simple things like, when you go into a store, the customer's always right,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
ends as soon as you leave the store. But when you're dealing with a tourism situation, like as long as that person is there, you kind of have to
Mm-hmm.
keep that mentality. And that could last for a long time
40 years.
if they're
40 years.
there. Exactly. So it's definitely, it's a mentality that kind of leaks into every interaction, really. And not only into how we view ourselves, but how we view um, anyone else, really, that comes into the country or that we have to do business with, for example. It's not very
Mm,
empowering. I'll put it that way.
I was gonna say it might even contribute to little bit of our sort of xenophobia that we have.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Um, I find our relationship with tourists to be so strange. It's almost paradoxical because we see. I mean, and I've had my time as a hospitality professional, and on the one hand, we seem to depend on and love tourists so much for what they bring to the Bahamas, but there also seems to be, I don't know if I would call it an envy, but maybe there's
Hmm.
some sort of latent, I don't know, antipathy that we hold towards our northern neighbors. I mean, I don't want to say it, but there's some sort of tension there.
Mm. So I've never worked in hospitality, so I can't say for sure. You definitely know more than me, but I that sounds absolutely right. To where it's like you depend on these people for survival in a sense. But of
Hmm.
course, because of that, but also because of like the mode of interactions where you're completely serving them, you have to dote on them. It wouldn't surprise me that it creates some kind of resentment at the end of the day.
Hmm. So so in the back to the property Jack's Bay, I noticed the big selling point was that it's going to be the number one living area in the world in terms of quality, but also it's going to be a private community. So it's going
Yeah.
to be the best in the world, but also I'm assuming Bahamians aren't really expected to go in there or live in there.
Yeah, unless they're, maids or whatnot, which, as you can see, that would explain the resentment. So where
Yeah.
you live in a country that's like you're a citizen of the country, but there are certain places you can't enjoy certain things or may not even be allowed to go, which is
Mm, mm,
insane.
mm. And it seems as if we're cordoning off more and more of these areas.
Right. And it kind of increases the worst of a position we're in because we get desperate and we feel like, and of course we're not going to do the work of properly creating new industries and whatnot. So we just say, okay, well, we'll just give you whatever you want. And to be fair, that's what we've done for a long time, and it's fully detrimental. And it kind of affects every Bahamian, whether it's in terms of where people can go, property and housing prices.
Mhm.
It becomes more and more prohibitive for like your average individual.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, how can, if 80% of our labor really is concentrated in tourism, and most Bahamians are, maids or bartenders or some other role in the restaurant or hotel industry, how and you've seen the prices of products in the Bahamas. We import everything.
Yeah,
They might be three times as much as America, and our land is even more expensive because we it's such a scarce resource.
right.
How can the less economically blessed of our citizens, which which is honestly 80% of our citizens, how can
Mhm.
what is the route to them achieving wealth folding towel in a resort for wealthy Americans?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question, and I'd be lying if I said I had the answer. But interestingly enough, this pandemic has basically showed the world how connected everyone is and how much one something that happens in a country far away affects us too. And just like we were talking about earlier, it's that kind of uh, the asset inflation going on in the US, but also in other countries where, the rich are getting richer because of maybe stock market prices or smaller businesses closing down, making, more space for larger businesses, et cetera. And because of that, you have this kind of, like, say, for example, like property prices in New York, property prices in Toronto, they're exorbitant and they've been increasing because of this like global asset inflation and just in general, wealthy people becoming wealthier. And and even if they're from other countries, they, go into other places, buy property there, leave it there. And that definitely happens here, which is why, again, the average person, it's very difficult for them to afford any kind of property. Um, so it's a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
think that's
things that, hmm?
we call that rent seeking behavior, correct?
Exactly, 100%. Great,
Yeah. How
great
do
use of
we?
the term.
Is there any way? How do we solve this? How do we? I mean, see, the problem I'm seeing is that the poorest of the poor get poorer, and
Yep.
whenever we watch these press conferences, they the words that I'm seeing is "come and fold towels." It just for me, it's not as inspiring as it could be
Mhm.
as a Bahamian citizen. Um,
I mean,
but
it's tough, and it's one of those situations where a lot of things could affect it, but most of those things will be unpopular at the end of the day. So, for example, I mean, the government could step in and say, we're blocking or at least reducing the amount of, property that you can own if you don't live here, for example. But
mm,
that takes a lot of guts to do as a government, especially when again we're so beholden to foreign money. Um, on the other side, on the labor side, maybe you could have more, well, one more labor organizing in general, but also more things like cooperatives where people are
mm,
creating their own small businesses, creating their own industries together in ways that the wealth is a bit more shared, and people are kind of operating in their own unit rather than as an individual. And I think even just that, like, the proliferation of co-ops would go a long way because we do have a weird, very American individualist mentality in this country, and it does not work for us. And I think even things like, again, uh, more people on the labor side kind of working together to build, that would definitely go a long way. And it's something that they could do outside of, foreign entities or government policies and whatnot.
yeah, that actually that really strikes a chord with me. I think American individualism, that sort of objectivism, is probably the worst import that we've taken in from America because it just doesn't suit our nature. We are such a close knit family based community. I mean, even
Exactly.
I think we have the most churches per capita. We have large extended families. We really are more dependent on each other than in America. So
100%.
I like your suggestions there.
And it goes
Stefen,
down to really what democracy is at the end of the day, because if you vote for a government, but that's pretty much where the extent of your, you know, democratic kind of interaction ends. There's no democracy in the workplace, for example. There's no kind of real ownership or decision making in, the institution that you go to every single day and where you spend
mm,
most of your time. So it's a very important way to, and again, this goes back down to decentralization, where,
mhm.
and I'm actually really interested in seeing what people create in terms of blockchain-based businesses, and I mean that in terms of like fully using blockchain for, their organizational processes, but we can go into that another time.
Sure.
But that's fully like a kind of a mentality that needs to be proliferated, where people have more ownership and have more access, have more, say in what happens on a day-to-day basis.
I 100% agree. Empowerment, ownership, sort of Jocko Willink style, would really make us more independent.
It's the
Um,
only way forward.
yeah, we're coming up on an hour now. I'm mindful of your time, of course. Uh, it is a work day. I appreciate you giving up your lunch hour for me. Um,
Not a problem.
is there okay? So for people who are interested in blockchain, crypto, Bahamian economics, how can they get in touch with you?
So my Twitter is Steph Delev, STEFDELEV. Um,
Hmm.
Facebook, LinkedIn, obviously under my full name. You could also check out the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance's website, which is cbahub.org. So that's cbahub.org.
Hmm. Okay, cool. Thanks so much. If I just wanted, if you had a few minutes, do you have time for five super fast rapid fire questions?
All right, let's go for it.
Okay, you can answer in one word or as many words as you like. They're fun and easy. I like to end a really long and depressing economic conversation with some fun insights into our culture. So, um,
Nice.
question one: Click or Sans?
Click. I,
Okay.
I
All
I
right.
know I know that's a bit controversial, but and if we're going in terms of tastes, still click.
Okay, so you're a fan of the more European style lager.
I am.
Okay, okay.
Stella's my favorite beer, actually.
Oh wow, you bougie. Of course, where can find you. Okay. Question number two. What is your favorite family island?
Wow. Eleuthera, and that's because most of my family's there.
That's my favorite island too. I'm glad we look at us gaining consensus one conversation at a
Look at that.
time. Question three. What is your favorite type of conch? How do you take it? What's the best way?
Oh, that's a tough question. I'll go with fritters.
Fritters.
Yeah.
Well, you really dived down. You dove down from the elitist tower
I, you
down
know,
to.
I'm multifaceted.
Oh no, that's hey, you're a true man of the people. And for international listeners, fritters are interesting because the joke is any con condemn fritters, which is it's usually conch flavored dough, and
Yeah,
you really hope you got to know the chef because you hope they stir the bucket to pieces so you ain't getting all dough.
you got to go to the right places.
Yeah, yeah. Um, question number four: Is the Bahamas a real place?
Woof. We are. Yeah, no, we're not a real place.
Oh gosh, and I actually don't. I'm not too hurt by that question because you're an economist, and that is not a real science.
Absolutely fair. You know what? I've learned to accept it. And I've personally revolted against like a lot of aspects of, mainstream economics. So 100% right.
That's good. Okay, well, now that we've settled that, um, last question, question five. This is the magic wand question. If you had magic wand and you can wave it and you could affect any change nationwide across our archipelago, what would you do? What would you wish for?
Wow, that's a good one. Um, Boy, there's so many things. So I'm gonna split my answer in two, if that's okay. Uh, Actually, you know what? I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna say proper regional integration, as in more trade, more just a better relationship in general with the wider Caribbean.
Mm, mm, mm. Okay, and what would you hope that to achieve?
So I think in terms of the global, I mean, there's a lot of things, right? But in terms of the global scale, that would make us a block, really, in terms of better, not only better access to the global economy
Hmm.
and also better, like maybe say trade rights, and things like that. Mainly because we try to do things unilaterally, we try to do things individually, and we get steamrolled over because of it, because we have no real power at the end of the day. And the
That's
more we
interesting.
integrate with the region, we kind of grow in strength, we go in power, we go in things that we could do. And long term, I would love to see not only that happen, but also a greater Caribbean connection with Africa as Africa grows in power.
Mm. I really I vibe with that. It's almost like joining a poker game, late game, and you don't have too many chips. If
Mm,
we join with the countries, we could bring more chips to the table and actually maybe even last a few rounds before we get bullied off.
right. That's actually a great way to put it.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, Stefan,
Mhm.
thanks so much for coming on the podcast, and thanks for talking about the issues that face us and the possible solution.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, man, let's see what happens these next few weeks. Let's see if we run out of money, or if we don't run out of money, or if we borrow money, or if we, find some oil and extract it. I hope we can we can chat again and maybe discuss going on in the future.
Yeah. And probably should buy Bitcoin.
Yes, yes, yes. I'll be coming to you for that. Hey, thanks so much, man. We'll play catch up.
No problem. Talk to you soon.
All right. Yes, I.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Stefen Deleveaux. I hope it granted some insight into the Bahamian economy and its discontents. If you liked or enjoyed the podcast, please share it with your friends and family. Rating it high on your podcast app and sharing it is the best thing you can do. Um, and I'd really appreciate it. If you have any questions or want to get in touch with me, you can tweet me at Nassau Alex. That's Nassau Alex. And you can email me at conversations with a conch. And I am going to get a shorter email soon. So thanks for listening. And I hope you tune in to the next episode. So I just listened to the conversation back. I left it completely unedited. I'm going to do that for all these conversations. I think it's just better if they're natural, um, not overly produced. I just want to apologize on the sound. There was a thunderstorm going on overhead, and somehow it affected me, but not Stefan. But by the next episode, I'm going to invest in a definitely a microphone and possibly a camera. We'll see if we'll definitely get better audio, but also possibly doing a video as well. So if you can, just subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast high, subscribe to the YouTube, and yeah, I'd appreciate your continuing listenership and support. So thanks.